Welcome to the joy of coding.
Hello, and welcome to episode 260 of The Joy of Coding. My name is Mike Conley. It's so good to have you here. We're going to be hacking on some Firefox stuff. I'm less sure, I think, than I have been in a long time of what I'm going to do today. I'll go into more detail in just a second, but let me start by sharing my screen. One moment. Okay, so here's my screen, and let me pull up the agenda. Right, so happy September. It's September 1st, 2021, episode 260, and a reminder, no plan survives breakfast. I don't really know what I'm going to be doing today during the stream. I'm going to make it up as I go, and I might get sidelined. I might get distracted, and that's okay, especially whenever I don't have a plan. Who knows what's going to happen? We're just kind of meandering around in the field of code, and who knows what'll happen. But we'll find something useful to do. So I also wanted to mention that there is an episode guide to the Joy of Coding. If you're not sure how to get to it, well, let me first talk about the agenda, because the agenda is what we're looking at, and the agenda has all the handy links that you're going to want to click if you want to follow along. So if you're watching this on YouTube, check out the video description for the agenda link. And if you're watching this on Air Mozilla, it'll be in the video details section where you can find the agenda link. And if you're watching this on Twitch, I am about to drop a link into the Twitch chat. Here it is, agenda into the Twitch chat for episode 260. Okay, so there's an episode guide. You should check it out. In fact, let's see if there are any pull requests to the repository, because that's not what I want to do. Because the Joy of Coding episode guide is hosted entirely on GitHub. If you're not familiar with it, let me open up a tab. And the reason my computer is a little slow right now is because of a build I'm doing in the background. I did a poor job of preparing for this stream, and so I haven't. The thing I wanted to work on, I need to build it, and so I realized I needed to do a build like maybe 10 minutes before the stream started. So the build is now running in the background. It's been running for about 13 minutes. Hopefully it'll be done shortly, and then we can proceed with the thing I wanted to work on. But until then, we can find something interesting to do. Interestingly, this link view on GitHub is very strangely styled. I'm not sure what's going on there. I don't know what happened to the episode guide, but this is all wrong. That should be a green button over here on the right. So that's an interesting development. But we are a number of episodes behind, and I want to see whether or not there are any pull requests from people who wanted to submit episodes. And yes, there are. There are some episodes. So let's see if we can merge some in while we wait for that build to finish. As I'm doing this, just a reminder, the episode guide is completely viewer-driven, viewer-curated. If you are a viewer and you have your own notes, your own addenda, stuff you want to add to the episode guide, all you need to do is send me a pull request to the repository. Help you, help yourself, help the fellow viewers, linking to interesting things that they might want to know about, and make the episodes more useful, and the episode guides more useful. So this one's for episode 256, was on July 28th, 2021. That looks right. All of these links look right. We were reviewing some code. That is correct. We were fixing some stuff up in the clear recent history modal dialog. And I answered some questions, and I talked about Mercurial. All of this looks good. I'm into this. So I'm going to go ahead and accept that. For episode 257, it was August 4th. That's correct. Let's see what else happened in here. The link looks right. Second manage bookmarks item is not in the bottom of bookmarks menu after landing patch. Right, we fixed an issue in the bookmarks menu button. We reviewed some patches. I talked about the background hang monitor. And I answered some more questions and some stuff, interesting things that I do in my spare time. And I talked about artifact builds. Interesting. I didn't non-artifact build. Disk usage after build for artifact build. That's interesting. I didn't realize that these statistics had been gathered. I didn't remember doing that, but all right. Both of these episode guides look great. Let's take them. So I'm going to merge this pull request, confirm the merge, and say thank you. Oh, SmurfD says that they provided, SmurfD provided those statistics. So thank you, SmurfD. And episode 258, also from SmurfD. Let's take a quick peek. This was August 11th. 258. What happened? Yep, that looks right. That looks right. That looks right. The button from the sync tabs door hanger was missing its label. And we posted a patch for it. Did that land? I don't even remember working on this. It was so long ago. It did. It did. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. We were making that button visible. We actually ended up uplifting this. If I am not mistaken, this ended up landing in beta, and it may have even gone to the ESR just as like a quick fix. Yeah, it was taken for the ESR as well, which is interesting because the ESR normally doesn't take stylistic issues like that. But, I mean, it fixes a pretty broken experience, which is a button that has no label. So there you go. And we also fixed a Talos issue. That was interesting, and we made it work. And talked about some of my favorite sites and long blathering. Yep. All that looks right. So I'm going to merge this in. Thank you, SmurfD, for the episode guides. And I'm not entirely certain what's going on with that button in the episode guide. If we go back to the page for the episode guide, Joy of Coding episode guide. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening up here. In fact, let's take a moment and see if we can investigate this. Maybe we can fix this while we wait for this build to complete. If it seems like I'm scrambling because I didn't expect to, I didn't expect this build to be required. I am, but hey, we're just making it work. We're just making it work here. So there is this class fork. There's a link. There's a marker, which I guess is someone added how does this work? Tabular nums marker font variant numeric. That's interesting. That's not your typical bullet right there, but there it is. And oh, this is from the user agent. I see. This is my own user agent style doing this. That's just a normal bullet. And then here we have the text. Now, what's interesting is I'm pretty sure that at some point this was a green button that appeared over here. So I haven't changed the style sheet recently. So my first question is the style sheet, where does it come from? Let's take a quick peek, reload the page, and see where the style sheet comes from. Style sheet does come from us, from assetstyle.css. That's interesting. It used to be this giant green box, and now it's just not there. So class fork, I'll notice, doesn't seem to have any kind of special styling. It appears to be missing. So let's look in our style editor real quick. Is there anything in here about fork? Whoop. Yeah, there is. If you have a header nav ul.li.fork, that's the only thing in there about fork. Why isn't that style being applied, by the way? Nav ul.li fork. So if we are within the header, we're within a nav element. Yes. Then an unordered list. Well, here's a problem. We're a list element without an unordered list. Or, sorry, no, that's not right. Sorry, a list element. Yeah, we're a list element within that, and we're not contained within a list of any kind, which is very strange. How did this happen? Normally, whenever you have a list element, li, you have it contained within something like that. That's what it's supposed to look like. That is correct. The fact that it's floating left is a little bizarre. I always thought it was over here. I thought it was on the right side. So why, first of all, is this view on GitHub list item not showing up inside an unsorted list? What's the dealio? Let's see if we can figure that out. There's a theme. So the joy of coding, let me open up a new terminal. We can take a look at the source code for the site, and maybe we can figure out how this happened. Joy of Coding episode guide. So the last time I pulled was middle of April, so it's been a while. Get diff, get pull origin master. Scoobap doo doo bop bop. All right, so we pulled in a bunch of episodes, and now if I trying to remember how I do this, I think this is all with Jekyll, right? What does the contributing guide say? I should just read the contributing guide. How to add a new episode, how to run a copy, install Jekyll, and then go here and then bundle exec Jekyll serve. Do I have to build? Is there a build step? I don't know, but let's see what happens when I say that. Could not find addressable. Bundle install to install missing gems. Bundle install. So it's been a while. It's my own episode guide, and I haven't like built it in a while. But you know, while we're waiting for this bundle thing to complete, maybe we can take a look at the style sheet and how that works. Would it be under layouts? Homepage, content, list episodes, default. What's in here? Yeah, look, like there are like these. There's this like, why was this never inside an unsorted list? It was always just on its own. Was that always the case? All right. Well, while we're follow this link, layouts. Yeah, this stuff has not changed in a long time. It was always just an LI instead of inside of a nav bar. Where's the style sheet? Where's the style sheet? Oh, do we bring that in from somewhere else? That might be what happens. That might be what happens. So where does the style sheet come from? Let's see. Assets, CSS, style.css. Where does that come from? I feel like I should know how all this stuff works, but I don't. Where is the theme? People are talking about it's in the theme. Where's the theme? Theme. Theme, Jekyll theme midnight. So I wonder if the theme that we build with and that GitHub builds with automatically whenever you have like a Jekyll site has changed itself. That would make sense to me. So let's go back to the episode guide for a second. So this theme may have been updated recently. In fact, let's see if we can follow along here. Maybe we can find, oh, that's someone's Twitter account. Hosted on GitHub Pages, theme by Matt Graham. What's the theme called? Is there a name for it? It was called like Jekyll theme midnight. Jekyll theme midnight. It's a theme. So it was updated when? Midnight. And presumably there's some kind of like style, CSS, blah, blah, blah. Where did it come from? Sass, Jekyll theme midnight. Fork. Here it is. Fork. Now, did this stuff change recently? Oh. Oh, this looks recent. But like, this was committed back in February. Why is this only... Maybe they spun a release. But this looks very related. Where like they made it so that you had to be within the unsorted list element. And I wonder if this theme then got released. When is there... On July 26th, there was a release. And then maybe at some point, GitHub updated it. Oh, on July 26th, that's whenever they fixed... In version 0.1.2, they released the fix on July 26th. And then presumably maybe GitHub shipped that or installed it in the thing that they used to build our site. So if I were to do bundle Jekyll serve now, what would I see? Okay, and then I don't know what port that's on, but let's try 8,000. No. What port? What does oh, here we go. 4,000. Okay, so this looks right. This looks right to me. What happened? And I guess it was always on the left? That's weird. I honestly thought it was always on the right. So I'll bet you I am running with an older version of the theme style sheet. So I don't know how I update that. Jekyll theme midnight 011. That's what's going on. So here's what I'm going to do to fix this. Just because now I think I have a sense of what's going wrong. And I guess this was always on the left. That's fine. What I'm going to do is go to git checkout b. Here, let me pump up my font so you can see what I'm doing. Just going to do the classic git stuff. I don't often use git these days, but I like to create a new branch for every fix I make. Fix fork button. And now I will, in default, I'm going to update this so that the header is within an unsorted list. Let's do that again. I wonder if there's a way I can also install the newer theme. I bet there is. There's probably like a bundle in like there's this gem file. Maybe I can update the version that I'm using. All right. Well, first of all, let's see what it looks like. So that's interesting that it actually changes the layout when I'm using the old style sheet. Let's see if I can get the new style sheet then. So Vim, gem file, GitHub pages, Jekyll plugins. That's interesting. Gem file, lock. So midnight. It's stuck on 011. How do I update the theme? Bundle. So if I'm like Jekyll update theme. How to change your theme. Open your gem file. Add the theme to the gem file. How to update theme to the latest version. What if we do bundle update? Does that help? It's been a while since I've used Bundler. Oh yeah, it's updating a bunch of stuff now. Wow, a lot of the stuff was out of date. Woo! Active support. Isn't that the thing from Rails? Okay, so this might do it. This might get us into the fixed state, and then we can update this, and then we'll call it a day. Meanwhile, how's my, well, we won't call it a day. We will call this problem solved on the episode guide. Thank you to Smurf D for submitting the episode guide and giving me a reason to notice that, that problem. Meanwhile, hopefully this build will finish shortly. I also have some questions that came in from the Rate This Episode form. For today, maybe we can get to some of those soon. Like while we're waiting, maybe I can answer this first one. Have Firefox devs sent patches to Chromium, and have Google devs sent patches over to Firefox? Great question. Whoever asked that question, that's a great question. I believe yes to both. We actually, I know of a group of people called Igalia, which is a contracting firm, if you're not familiar with Igalia. They are an open source consultancy and development group, and one of their specialties is to work on browsers. They contribute to web browsers. So they're not specifically Chromium devs or Blink devs or WebKit devs or Gecko devs, but they work on a bunch of different browsers, browser engines, and they they will take money from people. Like if you want to get something landed, it's been approved by the W3C, but you want to say you're a company and there is a specific like web specification that you're like, that's gone through standards. I'd really like it to be available for all browser engines because my company wants to use it. Then you could pay Igalia, instead of waiting for all the browser engines to do it themselves, you can pay Igalia, I think, to like go into those various browser engines, interact with the open source community within them, and like do the work. Like they can adapt the software, they can upstream integration, like all sorts of interesting things. They do consultancy as well. It's a very interesting company, Igalia. And so they're not like Firefox devs in that they're not staffed by Mozilla, and they're not Chromium devs in that they're not staffed by Google, but they are a group of people outside of both of those organizations that cross over, which they're really great. And I know people who have been engineers at both Google and Mozilla and Apple who now work for Igalia, for example, and they kind of cross the boundaries that way. But I'm also aware of, there's at least one engineer I can think of at Mozilla who has contributed to the Chromium code base. Usually it's whenever we find a bug, like we find a thing, it's like if we're feeling generous and we find a bug in Chromium that, we think is simple to solve, and we might provide the patch to them. I don't know if I've ever seen a patch come in from the Chromium devs to Firefox, but it wouldn't surprise me. We compete with one another. The Chromium, like the Blink engine and the Chromium browser and the Firefox and the Gecko engine, the Firefox browser, and we compete with one another. but we also collaborate a lot. And some of our code is actually shared. Like the WebRTC stack within Firefox and Chromium are shared. We have like a library that we use, the WebRTC library, or maybe if I go to webrtc.org. Yeah, this stuff. There is a like library that they've written. So this is their source repository. And this stuff we basically built, like we have it running within Gecko. We glued it into Firefox to make it work. And so that way we've like sort of a common implementation of WebRTC in two distinct engines. And that's pretty handy because WebRTC is very complex, very complicated, and it's nice to have, and we work together, like both the Chromium team and Mozilla work together on the WebRTC code, I believe, and contribute to it. So I hope that answers your question. So I'm going to say WebRTC as well. There are other parts of Firefox that, hang on, let me link to this, are shared between Firefox and Chromium, but I can't remember what they are. There aren't too many, but there are a few. WebRTC is one. The way we do sandboxing, our sandbox is also, so our content sandbox is something that we also use from Google, and I believe we upstream patches as well. Like we upstream patches to the WebRTC library. And I'm certain there are other shared libraries as well. You can actually get a whole list of all the things that, or not a whole list, but like a good sense of all the different things that Firefox uses by going to about:license. You can find a whole lot of stuff that we use that are like common libraries. Some of them's a little out of date, like the Firebug license. I'm not sure what we would have in here that's still, it even, so apparently we took some code from Firebug for network helper. That's interesting. That's nice that we kind of list where it comes from. So you can get this like big list of licenses that we use, and maybe even a sense of where we use them. So the WebRTC license applies to this entire directory, and like here's the license. So anyways, I hope that's interesting. I hope that was a helpful answer. Let's take a look at this Jekyll thing. Did we update the theme? Yes. We went to 020. So let's rerun our Jekyll serve command and see what it looks like now that we've updated. Ruby. One of my pet peeves with Ruby is that it always feels really slow. Maybe it's gotten faster over the years, but in my experience, Ruby is, as scripting languages go, it's always been it feels very heavy. Not saying that that's impossible. Like lots of great websites, web applications are built on top of it. What's going on here? There we go. See, that looks right. Okay, we did the right thing, everybody. That looks good. So I'm going to commit that change. So what we did was we updated the gem file, all that stuff, and then we updated the markup to look like this. I'm going to commit that change. And layouts, default, update default layout to account for Jekyll Midnight theme. Is that what's called? Jekyll Midnight theme? And then it was version 020. C issue. I'm going to refer to this one. Commit, not HG, commit, amend, C such and such. And did I get that right? That name, Midnight, Jekyll, Theme Midnight is what it's called. Get Jekyll Theme Midnight. Scooby-Doo-Doo-Doo-Doo. Theme Midnight. Okay. and git checkout master. Just double check, make sure nothing else has been committed. I don't think I'm the only one who can commit, so this is very unlikely that anything else will be in there. We're going to merge fix fork button. And then we will remote show. I have to add it as an upstream. How do I do this? It's been a while since I've done this stuff. Git remote add me is what I usually call it. Git push me master. Scooby-doo, doo-doo-doo. There we go. We did it, everybody. So that should be fixed. And then hopefully if we go to the actual episode guide now and we reload it, eventually GitHub is going to notice that I updated the repository, and it should update the rendering here. Let's give it a couple of minutes. In the meantime, let's take a quick peek at our build of Mozilla Central, where it's at. It's going through media now, so still got a ways to go. Hopefully this will be done shortly. I'm sorry to make you wait. I really wish I'd done the work of getting this ready before the episode started. But maybe while we're waiting for that, we can... oh man, these are some heavy questions. We can go through some of these. Oh my goodness. These are big questions. What songs have been playing in the back of your head lately? There's a song by Dinosaur Pileup called 1111. Dinosaur Pileup is a band from the UK that's like... I'm a fan of grunge, like 90s grunge. And Dinosaur Pileup is not from that era, but they sound like it in a little bit. The way I describe them to my friends is, imagine if you took like Black Sabbath and the Foo Fighters, smashed them together, and then gave them sort of a grunge edge. You'd have Dinosaur Pileup, I think. Anyways, I really like that band. There's a song called 1111, and the guitar riff, the sort of bum 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 bum, like that is always running in my head. Especially lately. It's very easy for that to get stuck in my head. I think that's all that's been in my head lately. For a long time, like maybe a couple of days at least, I had a song by K-Flay stuck in my head called Dating My Dad, which is not what it sounds like. It's not about her actually dating her dad, but it's about dating someone who ultimately is like her dad. That was stuck in my head for a while. And I think that's all I'm going to mention. All right, let's see if that GitHub page is updated. Yay, we fixed it, everybody. We fixed it. So if you are noticing a similar weird breakage on your Jekyll Midnight thing, that's how you fix it. So we can put that in the agenda. Fixed the Joy of Coding episode guide theme. That was broken due to a Jekyll theme update that probably happened on GitHub's side of things. Because I didn't change anything. It was GitHub, which presumably runs Jekyll, must have updated themselves. And whenever they produced this thing, and that's why that broke. And why it caught me off guard. Okay, let's answer one more question before I try and find something else to do. What in your life do you feel grateful for? Whew. Again, heavy question. I'll do my best. So, I'm grateful every day that I'm alive. I was in a car accident when I was younger, when I was just out of high school, not long out of high school, and I got into a pretty major car accident where I could very easily have died. And so ever since then, I have been very grateful to be alive. You know, every day feels kind of like I got away with it. So I always have that in the back of my head that I could be dead, but thankfully I'm not. So being alive. Also, I've got a great family, great friends, you know, and great job that I enjoy. You know, I live in Canada, where, you know, every country has its problems, Canada included, but like I could have been born in a war zone and I wasn't. So I'm very grateful for that. And let's see. I'm grateful for the small things like tea, coffee, tasty tap water. Toronto's tap water is very tasty. There are other parts of Ontario where the tap water can taste sulfuric or very heavy in chlorine. Toronto's tap water, delicious. Also, just Toronto in general. I didn't grow up here, but I've been living here for like over a decade. And what I've learned about Toronto is that it's got a lot of hidden gems, not just, you know, when you go to a city, there are hidden gems. They're like, oh, it's got a cool museum, or it's got a cool, you know, things to do, things to go to and pay a ticket and go do it. But for Toronto, the things that I like about it are there are like hidden chunks of nature in Toronto. Like there's an area called like the Don Valley Parkway, which most people drive through, but there's a bunch of trees on either side, and you can actually find trails that go through it. So you can almost feel like you're in the middle of a provincial park in downtown Toronto, because suddenly you're just surrounded by trees. It's amazing. High Park is also really great for that in Toronto. And we also have some islands. Like I'm really close to the beach, and I never really took advantage of that, but Toronto has a beach and it's pretty great, you know? So hopefully that answers that question. The things in life that I feel grateful for. Oh, and like good books, that I can read them. And yeah, I think that's it. Okay. Hopefully that answers that question. It was a heavy one. This next one's also really heavy, or like really sort of intense. I'll do my best to answer it. Hey, look, we're building this third-party WebRTC stuff that I was telling you about. This is code from the WebRTC library that's building. Very nice. Maybe while we're waiting, I can talk a little bit about the thing that I want to actually look at. Like, why am I building this thing? What's going on? I kind of briefly went into it last week, but I never got a chance to really do much about it. I think we ended up like looking at at some profiles or something. But basically, there is a regression that one of our performance tests has detected on session restoration, and the regression makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Why does the regression not make sense? So let me briefly describe the test that is running, the patch that caused the regression, and why I think it doesn't make any sense. Okay. So we have some tests called in the Talos Performance Suite, and the tests are called Session Restore, No Auto Restore, and there's another one called just Session Restore. And what these measure are the time between initializing the session restore component and finishing the session restore, some session restore operations. So to be clear, what session restore is the thing that remembers what tabs you had open at one time, maybe what windows you had open, and then on startup, it pulls that information off of the disk, and if you're configured to, it will restore your old windows and your old tabs. And if you're not configured to, it will at the very least offer you the option of restoring those old things under history with like the restore previous session button. So session restore no auto restore is the version that starts up session restore, slurps the session state off of the disk, and then doesn't like bring back your tabs or windows. That's how Firefox ships by default, where we don't automatically restore your old session, but it's available. If you go into history, there's a restore previous session button. So that measures the amount of time to go from one to the other. And then the session restore test is the same, except it actually does restore all of the tabs and windows. And it waits until all of those tabs have finished restoring and all the windows have finished restoring, and then it stops the stopwatch. And we apparently caught a 10% regression in the session restore, no auto restore, and the session restore test, which is pretty interesting. The fact that this was reported twice I find very strange. But like there's one down here and there's also one up here. But that was worth investigating. You know, browser startup is a thing we care a lot about. And if this thing is taking a while, we want to know about it. One of the things that we determined was that when looking at profiles and whatnot, well, let me now tell you the thing that caused the regression, because what we did, you know, early on is figure out, okay, well, what was the patch that introduced the thing that's being reported? And the thing that landed was this patch to remove some old gunk from our content process switching logic. So back before we had fission, and back when electrolysis was a thing and we had only a couple of content processes, I think we had like 4 content processes maximum. The way things would work is every time you tried to load a new site, we would choose a content process from the set that you had. If you didn't already have 4, we would spawn a new one and load the site in that one. But if you already did have 4, if you had all of your content processes ready to go, then we would choose one that pre-existed. And I think we'd just do it in round robin. Like there was really no grouping logic. It was done in order based on like the loads. And that worked fine, except that we do this thing whenever you open a new tab that we quietly load. Every time you have a window open, we quietly prepare a new tab document in the background so that whenever you open a new tab, it opens quickly. Like we don't have to load all the stuff. It's just there. Now, it looked a little sluggish when I clicked there, and that's because my machine is heavily encumbered doing this build and all of my cores are saturated. But normally when you click on the new tab button, when this tab shows up, it's pretty much immediate. And that's because it doesn't have to do a bunch of thinking about it, because it's actually loaded it already in the background. Part of the problem with that is that we eventually moved that page, that about home page, into a content process. So it was a bit like quietly loading a page in the background. But if you had fewer than 4 content processes, the content process switching logic would notice that quiet load in the background of about new tab, and it would launch a new content process. And that caused us to use more memory than necessary. We would launch an entire new content process just for a page that you might not actually go to. Like if you only ever had 3 tabs open, we would launch an entire content process for a page that you'd never see and for a place that you'd never go to, like you'd never use it. And so that was a waste of memory. And a content process takes several megabytes. I think it's maybe even like a dozen megabytes. And whenever you're on a memory constrained system, every kilobyte matters, every megabyte matters. And so what we added was this mechanism. This was years and years and years ago. What the mechanism was, we treat about new tab differently, so that whenever we try and load it, instead of creating a new content process, if there's still room to do so, about new tab is special in that we will always choose one that pre-exists, and we will load in a pre-existing content process. So we will about new tab will never cause a new content process to be launched. And we don't need that anymore, because we made it so that about new tab loads in a special kind of content process. So you never end up having to make that choice of like, which one do I load it in? There's like only one, what we call the privileged about content process. So this was a big cleanup for a bunch of stuff that we don't need anymore. And so we got rid of a bunch of code. This was a bunch of removals, a bunch of logic removal. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for that to cause the regression. And so we were initially very skeptical, like what could be causing this regression? And we looked at profiles and nothing jumped out at us. And we looked at a number of different profiles, and it's very strange. Like you'd think something like this would kind of like appear as a strong signal for why, what's gone wrong, but it doesn't. And the other thing is that in the profiles, I didn't even notice much of a difference. I guess this might be the what you almost call the measurement effect, or the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. It's kind of like quantum physics, where or quantum mechanics, where the act of measuring, the act of profiling has changed the underlying characteristics of the problem. And so whenever we profiled, we couldn't actually find the regression anymore, even though it's very clearly being recorded here. In fact, if we look at, there are graphs. I don't know if I linked to them here. Yeah, there's a graph. You can see there's a very strong signal. This is not the right graph. Or it's too old, or it's too new. The signal is TS Paint, about home paint, session restore, no auto restore. Yeah, it's right here. Look at the, let's ignore these dots. The signal is actually quite strong. So the regression happened right here, and we went up a chunk. So there is a consistent signal there. But when we profile, the signal goes away. We cannot find it, which is very frustrating. The other thing we noticed is that whenever I modified the test to, like, the way the test measures itself is it looks at the difference of time between not session restore initialization and I said before it was session restore initialization and the point at which session restore is completed, but it's actually the point where the process reports having started and when session restore is completed. And whenever I changed the starting point from where we think the process has started, which is actually kind of tricky to measure, and moved it to the point where we enter the main function of the program of Firefox, which is very early on, if we change the starting point to there, the regression disappeared. So it's almost as if the regression somehow exists between process launch and main, or it's within where we how we calculate when the process has started, which is very strange, very, very strange. And so one of the things I wanted to do, and now that I have a build here, I can do, is read this comment from Nika, who worked on the original patch that caused the regression. And let's go through this comment together, now that you have the context. Comparing the markers, I noticed the browser glue import took 60 milliseconds longer, and there's an interesting jump in timestamp for markers around when such and such, based on your observation that the GPU process is not being launched until slightly later. There's another gap around the activate DOM event, which fires 6 milliseconds after this, but 40 milliseconds after the bad profile. I don't see anything in the profiles which points at how this patch could cause this regression. All the modified code shouldn't even be running yet at this point. We barely started the load of browser.xhtml. I highly doubt we're executing tabbrowser.js yet, and even document load listener will have bailed out early due to a non-content browsing context before it got far enough in the process selection logic to hit the removed code. So the changes with the static atom table still seem like possibly the only cause of the issue. Is it possible to do the perf test between the pre-patch version and a version with the patch applied, but make the change to static atoms reverted? So the change to static atoms, let's take a look at the patch again. This is the one change where we remove what's called an atom. An atom is like a it's like a constant almost. It's how you refer to attributes inside of Gecko. Special attributes that have like very specific names. We call them atoms. There are probably other definitions for atoms, but we generate the list of atoms using Python, and that generates C++ that gets built everywhere. So this removal of this atom, that's what Nika says might be causing the problem. So what we can do is if we take a look at where I am in the tree right now, I am at, hang on. I am at the point in the tree where the regression exists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this to try doing the performance test, but I'm also going to do the work of reverting the static prefs part and seeing if that fixes the regression. Now, before I do that, I need to change this last commit because it forces what's called the base profiler on. And I don't know if I want to do that. Let me actually just take a quick look at my try build. Oh, if I don't gather a profile, it's fine. So that's what I'll do. I can keep it the way it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push a version that has the static atoms removed. I don't need to push a version like a comparison version because I've already got some with the same revision up here on try. I think it's not that old. It's the one here with the regression, and we've got these scores that we can compare against. And just double check that that's based on, let me see who the parent is. That should be based on Nika's patch. Yes, it is. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the static atoms and put this line back. So if we go to xpcom, you know what? I'm sort of kicking myself. I could have done this without having to do the build. There's no need for me to do the build. What a waste. Force message manager. So we're going to put the atom back. And then I will create a commit. Put the preloaded state atom back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use mock try again. Is it good or bad that you can recognize the mercurial hash for a specific patch? Good question, Smurfy. To me, that's usually a bad sign. It means I've been struggling with something for a while. And now I will use mock try again. Now, if I look at my mock try again list, or mock try again, yeah, I want to use Windows Talos Other. So mock, first of all, I SSH add my key, scooba-doop, boop, boop, doop, and I will mock try again, and with the commit message, put preloaded state atom back to see if regression disappears. So we'll push that to try. And it says it'll take about an hour based on past performance. And that is because we have to do a full native build here. We can't do an artifact build. We have to do a full native build with what's called profile guided optimization. It takes a while. But we're going to push that to try and see what happens. So I can write that down. Let's see if preloaded state is causing the issue. I don't think, based on this that estimate of how long this is going to take, and if we look at the past performance, how long has it taken? The entire job of doing like a check here. Is there a way I can see builds? No, you know what? I'm only interested in how long it took to do the build. 41 minutes, but it also had to do the instrumentation step, 24 minutes, and then wait, instrumented build. Profile guide, this is actually doing the job of making the build, and then this one actually generates the profile for the PGO build. So altogether, it's like you do 41 plus 14 plus 24. So it'll be a little over an hour, and then we have to run all of the performance tests. Each one does not take long, 3 minutes each. So we're looking at a result probably within an hour and a half. That is what I'm hoping, and I don't think that will fall within the boundaries of this episode, but if you're curious and following along, I will post the comment. We'll post the results in the comment, in a comment in the bug. So that went up. So the try build is going, and if you want to follow along, I will link to the try build here in the agenda. And we can see it cooking. So it's just waiting for the machines to sort of notice and catch up. All right, what next? Was there another thing I wanted to work on today? Well, there was some intermittence that I could look at, but I've done the silliest thing, which is that I created this build, and I didn't need to, And now I have to do a build all over again because I want to check out central and investigate an intermittent. Now what I can do maybe is I can do an artifact build, which is much faster, much faster. But if I end up having to do a deep dive into native code to investigate this intermittent test failure, then I might have to do an actual native build. The test failure I want to look at is over here. I added this component called top level navigation delegate, which allows us to do some interesting logic for top level navigations, frame navigations. And let me put a link in here. And I wanted to fix a test with it. So a test was failing at the very end of, like, after it does like six assertions, it times out at some point. And I want to understand why that happens and where. So let's open up the test browser top level navigation delegate. And so let's see here. This is the first assertion. Does delegate for 1. Oh, like it's 2 per. So does delegate for is 2, 4, then 6. And then we're checking to see that we don't delegate for going to example.com for reasons that I don't understand. Why do I not delegate for example.com? Oh, I think it's because of how the test top level navigation delegate works, where if we only want to delegate the navigation if in this test we go to example.org. Otherwise, we just let the load go through. And does not delegate for works by waiting for, well, hash change is false, so it doesn't wait for the hash change event. Instead, it waits for the browser loaded event. It sets up a browser loaded event promise. We load the URI, and then we wait for that load to occur. So let's see if we can reproduce this test failure. No builds yet. Browser top level navigation delegate.js, and I'm going to do it headless, and I'm going to do it with run until failure. Let's see if we can get it to fail on repeat. So to be clear, the reason I'm running it on repeat is because this is what's called an intermittent test failure, in that it doesn't always fail. It only fails some of the time. So running until failure did not work. The next step is to use what's called verify. Verify makes use of something in Gecko called chaos mode. And chaos mode is a mode of the browser where we, randomly change thread priorities. We randomly reorganize the contents of what should be unsorted collections, just to sort of like suss out issues that can occur that can cause intermittent test failures. So this helps us like sometimes reproduce test failures, intermittent test failures. But we'll see. We shall see. How's it going? So it also, verify will run the test. It's almost like a stress test on the test itself. It's going to run it in a variety of chaos mode configurations. The The other thing I should note while we're watching this, instead of just sitting back and watching it, is looking at the platforms that this tends to fail on. So it tends actually to fail on Linux. It tends to fail on Linux. If we take a look at let's take a look at one of the recent failures. And one of the nice things about our failures is that we tend to take a screenshot when it occurs. So it looks like we attempted to load example.org. So the actual attempt to load example.com doesn't seem to have gone through. Interesting. Oh, and Fission was enabled. Getting a spam phone call. That's interesting. Do I have to run it with Fission enabled in order to get this issue? Let's find the job in the tree. Where's the job? Where's the job? Yeah, okay. And this is basically leading me back to the bug, but I want to know like what the rate of failures is. Oh yeah, intermittent failures bot. That's what's going to tell us. So it comes and it goes. Last 30 days. It comes and it goes. It's not super frequent, but it seems to happen mostly on Linux. And does Fission tend to be enabled? Ah, yes, it does. Fission tends to be enabled. You can tell because it has FIS in the name. So that might inform why we're not having a good, having much luck reproducing it. I believe if I have to say enable Fission in order to enable Fission, obviously, when I run the test. Now, the other thing that might factor into this is the fact that I'm using Mac OS, although a lot of this document navigation stuff is not platform specific, so I don't know why Mac OS would be a factor. All right, let's also do verify on this. And then failing that, let's boot up our Linux box and see if we can reproduce over there. I'll sign into my Linux box over here. Okay. Here's my Linux machine. I don't know when the last time I pulled was. Back in July. Holy smokes. Okay, pull central. Let's up to date. Let's get it up to date. Meanwhile, how's this going? Still running. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Then I'm going to build on my Linux machine over here. So if it's not immediately obvious, I'm SSH'd into my Linux machine. This is how I do Linux testing. Oh, I must have had some changes, some local changes, whatever they are. Must have been testing something. Don't worry about it. I don't need that anymore. Update to the top, aka the tip. All right, let's do an artifact build. Build with, what is it? Artifact build? Is that what I call it? Yeah, okay. Inconsistent, Mike. Let's do an artifact build on the Linux machine, which will hopefully not take too long. And while we wait for that, let's see how our try build's doing over here. No jobs yet. Oh, complete. What are you talking about? Complete. How is that complete? Oh. Is try broken? Try does not look like it's queuing any jobs yet. Yeah, okay, so the last job that was queued was 5 minutes before mine were put in. It's possible that we're just like waiting on some machines to show up, because like all these other jobs are also waiting for try to wake up and to give them machines. Ooh, import PDL documentation. IPDL. So let's wait for this artifact. Oh, our artifact build is done. And it looks like we couldn't reproduce the issue over here on my Mac. So let's try and reproduce it over here on the old Linux box. Beef Viper says hello. Hello, Beef Viper. The other consideration for these test failures, or rather this test failure, was that it was like Linux, it was a debug build, but I think there was a mixture. Not all of them were debug, right? Some of them were not debug. Some of them were even shippable. Some of them were opt, some of them were debug. So it doesn't need to be a debug build, it sounds like. Let's actually look at a more recent detail of a Windows one. Let's see if we can find a screenshot of the failure here. So it's very similar. Example.org is what shows up in the URL bar. It's almost as if the attempt to load example.com did not go through. So if I'm not able to reproduce this here, then the next step is to usually to add logging and then push to Mozilla's to our try infrastructure and just retrigger a bunch to try and get the test to fail over in infrastructure, which is annoying. It is annoying. While we're waiting on that, let's answer another question. What do you value the most in a friendship and relationship? Oh man, these are heavy questions. I often I don't like. I enjoy these questions. I was thinking whenever I ask people like, "Do you have any questions for me?" They'd be like technical questions, like how does how does picture-in-picture work or something. But I'll happily answer these. What do you value the most in a friendship and relationship? Well, obviously, like ease of communication. That to me is like the key underlying infrastructure of any relationship, for me anyways, is ease and fluidity of communication. Comfortable communication. Someone who's able to someone else who's able to sort of like maintain a conversation and I don't know, they've got good humor. I value good humor. But like someone who I can trust, someone who I'm like, I would be able to trust you with my life, or trust you with something really, really, really important and know that you're going to pull it off, or know that you're going to try your best and you're not going to forget about me or something. I value that a lot. Trust, good humor, fluidity in communication. I think that's it. That's what I value the most. Good humor, trust, fluidity of communication. That's my answer for now. Okay, this last one is a more of a technical question, so let's see how it goes. Let's also peek in on our test run. You know what I'll do is I'll have this running in the corner while we answer this question. How do I do this? There we go. Come on. How do I want to arrange things here? How would you go about debugging intermittent hangs? So see that all passed. I think what we're gonna have to do is do the logging thing. Is WebRender enabled by default? I don't think WebRender was also a prerequisite, was it? I think WebRender is just enabled. Yeah, WebRender is the QR, which stands for quantum render, means WebRender is enabled. I don't see how that could be a factor here. Enable. Yeah, I think WebRender is just available by default. I couldn't disable WebRender if I wanted to. I think what we're gonna have to do is add a bunch of logging and push to try. That's the situation. B Fiber says, you're in Toronto? Nice. I'm in Montreal. Cool. Nice to see you, fellow Canadian. And vive la belle province. And what else? Vive Quebec. And I think Danny Colin is also somewhere in that province who may or may not be watching. But I love Quebec. How would you go about debugging intermittent hangs in Firefox after it's been on its own for a while? In the morning it is hanging but was working when you left at night, and this happens not every day but some. So that's a great question. How do you deal with something that happens only once in a while? Well, a hang is an interesting case because the hang itself may be the hang itself at the point where you come back may have enough information to be actionable. So like where the program is stuck might be able to tell you enough about what might be able to tell us enough about what's going wrong. So the thing to do is try to turn the hang into actionable data. And so the way you do that, there are a couple of different ways you can do it. For hangs on Mac OS or Linux, the best way to do it, if you're comfortable, is to cause a crash. Try and crash the process and create what's called a crash report. And that crash report will contain information about where the program was at the time of the crash, like where the main thread, which is usually when you hang, it's because the main thread in the parent process is stuck doing something or waiting on something. Knowing what it's waiting for, what it's stuck doing, is how we would start looking at this. So on Mac OS and Linux, the way you crash is like Mac OS and Linux, we want to crash intentionally. The way you do that, you need to get the process ID. Get the process ID of the parent process. And the way you do that usually is, on Mac OS at least, what I do is I find the, like, it'll be like Firefox Nightly. That's my parent process. And then there are other, like, child processes that will also show up, but they'll be named something else, like Firefox Nightly CP. CP stands for content process. But the one with the icon is the one that we care about, Firefox Nightly. And its process ID is 1327. That's over here. And there are other ways of doing that on Linux. I think if you use like top, you can get a view like this. But you can also do things like, what is it? I need a terminal. You can do things like ps aux grep Firefox. What? Oh, ps aux grep Firefox. That will list all of the processes that are named Firefox, and this one I think will also work on Linux, this command, and it spits out these two, and the second one's actually the command that I just wrote, so like that becomes a program that runs with grep, and we can ignore that. This first one, however, is Firefox, and that second set of this set of digits right here, 1327, that's the process ID. So so that to get the process ID, I recommend this command, ps-aux grep Firefox, and then you can crash the browser. That's interesting. Why didn't that put that in a code block? Here, let me expand this again. Where am I? Yeah, sorry, I must have escaped it. Weird. Okay. And then crash using sigabort. Like this. Kill sigabort and then process ID. So for example, with process ID, what was it? 1327, that would have been kill sigabort 1327. And that's going to kill the Firefox main process. Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry, PS. All right, not PX. PS. Thank you very much, Beef Viper. That is going to kill the parent process, which usually kills all the content processes at the same time, and that's fine because you have a hung content process or a hung Firefox. And it kills it in such a way that a crash report's created. So a dialog will usually come up after you run this that's like, hey, do you want to submit a crash report? And you are free to do that if you'd like. You submit a crash report. But the more interesting thing to do is to file a bug. You go to Bugzilla, file a bug talking about the hang that you experienced, and you want to go to about:crashes, and you want to find the crash report. Find the crash report where you crashed. It'll have a date when it was submitted and a button called view. So find the most recent crash after you create your crash report. So that involves, after you kill and you submit your crash report, then launch Firefox again and go to about:crashes, find the crash report, view it, and that's going to take you to this special page. And this special page has all the information, hopefully, about where you were hanging. So you can copy that and paste it into a bug report and say like, hey, I was hanging. I came back to my machine. It was hanging. I created a crash report and, help me. This is the crash report. And you put the link to it in the Bugzilla bug that you file. And if you want someone to take a look at it, and it's like a hang, you can file it under core::performance. File it under the core performance product component, and someone will triage it. I think that's triaged twice a week, so someone will see it. Now that's for Mac OS and Linux. If you're on Windows, you can't. I don't think you get commands like this. You have to use something else. On Windows, we actually have a special program called Crash Firefox Intentionally, or maybe it's just called Crash Intentionally .exe. And you can get that intentionally. You can get it from here. So if you go here and download this program, you can also find the source code for it if you want to build it yourself. If you're skeptical of it, source is here. But what it does is it will do the work of attaching to a running version of Firefox, injecting a thread, and then immediately crash. So it will inject a thread in the Firefox main parent process and then crash that thread. Create a thread that starts at null, and that should immediately crash. And then after that, follow the same directions as before. That will create a crash report, relaunch Firefox, go to about crashes, and then create a bug linking to your crash report and mention that, give us as much information as you can about the hang. Is it a hang that takes a couple of seconds and then things free up, or is it like a perma hang? Usually you want to do this sort of crash thing with a permahang because there's like no other recourse. If you've got a sort of situation where the browser feels like, okay, it's hanging for a couple seconds and then it frees up, and then it hangs a couple of seconds and then it frees up, what you want to do is create a performance profile instead. Performance profile. Reporting a performance problem. Follow the instruction. Oh, man. Reporting a performance profile. I can't believe that got moved. We really need to redirect. But where is it? Where is it? Where's a good document? Profile, Firefox, source docs, performance profile. Reporting a performance profile. This is the document. We should really update that wiki to point to this. But basically, if you have a thing that's like, it hangs for a couple seconds and then frees up, this guide has everything you need to know to how to report, to collect a performance profile and submit it. Smurf D, I guess that was your question. I kind of wanted to have some good idea to add to a bug and not just help. Yeah, I mean, the more actionable data you can give us, the higher the probability that we can fix a thing. And a crash report or a performance profile is like monumentally more useful than a description of what happened. All right. So I think hopefully our try build eventually started going here. What's going on? I think our try infrastructure is like not queuing jobs. I'm going to have to ask. Oh, no, we've got a job queued. It's just I think there's a long backup or a long backlog of jobs, but our jobs are starting to go. So that's good. Hopefully in a couple of hours, I'll have some information on whether or not we're putting that atom back causes the regression to go away. So we will see. Hopefully that will be interesting. I think I'm going to cap it there. So thank you so much for watching episode 260 of The Joy of Coding. I apologize that this one was a lot less structured and a lot less like digging into code than before. There's a lot more questions. But, hopefully that was interesting. Let me know what you thought, though. Maybe you really enjoyed these answering of questions. Maybe all of this was interesting. Who knows? Let me know. There's a link in the agenda to rate the episode. I'm also going to just drop a link inside of the Twitch chat for the folks who are there right now. Rate this episode link to fill out a form. And in that form is where you can also ask questions that I'll try and answer during the next episode. So go ahead, let me know. Smash that boo bop, whatever it is, the bell, the bing bong, whatever. And tell your friends, tell your family to subscribe. Whatever. Thanks again for watching episode 260 of The Joy of Coding. My name is Mike Conley. It's so good to have you here, and I will see you next week with episode 261. So, without further ado, take care. Bye-bye.
The joy of coding.
See ya.